Hey, I hope it's going well. Again, and we're working on these tutorials in Scratch so that you get more and more experience here, and so that you build your own game, your own project um, for submission for your AP exam. So here's the Space Invaders game. We have worked it out in such a way that we have our spaceship that can shoot. We have an alien where we can basically make a formation like that. They're coming at you. They're not lined up horizontally, but that's okay for now. Maybe we can fix that. Notice this is the code here for the alien. Let me zoom out a little bit. I actually used a loop here. This repeat 8 times. This is what makes my list of positions for the alien. So if I go here to variables and I show my list, notice it's populated here. Every time I click on the flag, that gets repopulated. It happens really quick. For me, that happens right here in this loop. You're more than welcome to analyze it, take a look at it. I didn't actually do a hard coding like some of you did. Literally put the -200, the -150. You added those items to the list, and that's fine. The convenience of doing it this way is that I've made this delta x variable, which basically tells me how far apart I want to space my alien spaceship. So if I increase this number to like maybe 80, they're going to be further apart from each other. Notice they're way apart. The last one is not even in the screen there. And so and rather than have to come in here and change every single one of them, I can change this one variable, and if I put it less than 50, they're going to be closer together. So just the convenience, also the starting position of the first clone here, -200. If I change that, my clones are going to be moved to the right, so on and so forth, okay? So that's why mine just looks a little different. The Y position for every clone starts at 160, so that's correct. My guess here, well, I guess a way to solve the fact that these are not lined up horizontally would be to have every clone start a little bit like this clone. Let me stop here and let me actually stop the motion. Notice we don't see this right now, but when I create the clone, it moves down one. It moves down, changes Y by -1. And then the next one, when it's created, this one has moved down already. So it's a little higher up, and this one's a little higher up. So the way we can work that out is instead of having them all show up at 160, we can make another array list for the Y position and have those as you're drawing clones, have them show up just a little bit further down so that they do line up. Maybe just maybe like 2 or 3 units downward. And so that would require us to make a list for the Y positions. These are as the lists right here. This list is for the X positions. I could make a list for the Y positions to line them all up. And I certainly can do that and show you. As a matter of fact, I could probably do it right now. By the way, the goal now is to get a scoring system in place. So we want to increase the score as we kill clones. We want to increase the score, have that be displayed here, and also add damage here to the spaceship. But let's work on trying to get these to line up. Notice they don't right now. They're a little off. Let's try it. So I'll make a new list, and you can go ahead and do this yourself. Y position for this sprite only. You only make a variable for all sprites if you're expecting to use that variable in maybe 2 different sprites. Like score, I would expect score to probably maybe be used on both sprites, like changed by both sprites. So I would make that for all variables. I'm going to set the first item in my list to 160. Notice here I add X start X start is negative 200 to X position. That adds the negative 200 here. And so I'll actually do one very similar where I'll add, oh, not in there. I'll add Y start, which is 160 right there, to Y position. Let me come in here and drag this Y start. So I'll add that. That's going to add a 160 here. Notice it shows up right there. Okay. I also want to delete, because if I press the flag again, it adds another 160. Every time I press the flag, I want to delete anything in the list. And so I'm going to grab this delete all. I'll put it here of Y position. Now, when I click on the flag, delete everything that's in it and start brand new. Now, I'm going to make this variable like delta X, which tells me how far these are going to be spaced out. Notice these are 50 units apart. Each clone is 50 units apart in the X direction. When I draw these clones, I want them to show up a little further down, because this one has, the first clone will have moved down by the last time the last clone is created. It will be a little higher up. And I'll do 1 unit. I think 1 unit might be good enough. So I'll make a new variable called delta Y. The sprite. I'll first set delta Y right here after delta X. I'll set delta Y to 1. 1. Actually, you know what? Negative 1. I won't show it on the screen. And what I would then want to do is notice here, let's look a little bit at what's happening in this loop. You're repeating 8 times. Set next X value to, you grab the item from your list. Let me explain what's happening here. What happens to put the negative 150 in my X position, I make this variable called the next new X value is item 1. So here we have index, which is 1 to start off with. Starts off as 1 right here. So from my list, I grab item 1, that's negative 200. To negative 200, add 50, that's delta X. So my new value, my new X value is negative 200 plus 50, that's negative 150. And then I added that new X value to my list. And I increase index by 1. So I can do something very similar where I can basically duplicate this. Now I won't need to change index by 1. So I need to make a variable called new Y value. I need to then set my new Y value. So the second item in my list is gonna set it to take. Let me kind of drag this out. Take item 1, index starts at 1 right here, from Y position. So that would be 160. And add, notice the plus there. Let me zoom in a little bit. Add delta Y, which is negative 1 instead. And so my new Y value is going to be 160 plus negative 1 is 159. And then add that new Y value to Y position to my list. And so what you should expect is you should expect 160, 159, 158, because delta Y is negative 1. And I'll add that right before I increase index by 1. Now, here, this cannot be just Y start. Every clone goes to item clone from X position. If I leave this as Y start, it's always going to be 160. And so I'll actually grab this and duplicate it. And I'll put it there. And I'll grab item 1 from Y position, and then clone is changing. So item 2, item 3, and let's try it. Wow, it's like magic. Okay, let me zoom out here. Let me see if they're lined up much better here. Notice, by the way, let me stop this for a minute. Notice, by the way, that indeed we subtracted 1 from the previous item. So this item 2 is the previous item minus 1. Item 3 is the previous item minus 1. And that's because of this delta y is set to -1. If I put -2, then these are going to go by 2s. And I don't expect these to be lined up. Notice they're not. If I set it to 0, I am back right where I started, which is that they're not lined up. Notice these are all the same, 160, 160, 160. So instead, I'm going to set it to -1. And this looks very good in terms of the formation. They look nearly all horizontal here. Let me stop this one more time. Now, what is happening? Well, the first clone starts at 160. It goes -200, 160. The last clone, if you look at your list, at both lists, the last clone, so -200, 160. Let me actually change the order here. First clone is at -200, 160. The next clone is -150, but 159. So it's actually a little further down, just one little unit down. And then the last clone is going to be 200 to the right over here and 152. So it's going to be a little further down than where the first clone was made. But this clone will have moved already down 8 units likely. And so that's why they show up all at the same location. So this, I mean, is it a big deal? Maybe not. But you make it much, much better here. So I'm going to ask you to look through my code, make the changes that you need here to make sure these formations are lined up horizontally. There's no lag there. And we also want to increase the score here. Every time you kill a clone, you want to increase your score. Let's start with that. So you would make a variable, and I would consider making the variable for all your sprites, call it score. And then within here, you need to then make sure that you increase that variable appropriately. Also, try to implement this here where you automate the population of your list. Let me walk you through this one more time here. X start is the first X coordinate for the first clone, -200. Y start is the first Y coordinate for the first clone. So the first clone is going to start at -200, 160. Yours might be a little different. Delta X is how far apart the clones are horizontally. They're 50 units. Delta Y is how far apart the clones will be when they're made vertically. So as you move down and start making more and more clones, the last clone is going to be further down than the first clone because when this clone is created, it starts moving downward. So I want this clone to be, when it's made, I want it to be lined up with this first clone. That's -1. Index is the first item in the list when I'm going to be adding these numbers. This is for the sprite that I am hiding. Notice I just actually have it off from -200 minus -200 minus 50. That's -250. So it should be over here, and then I hide it. I add the first X start and Y start to my 2 lists. That would be for the first clone. And then I repeat this 8 times so that I can add an additional 8 coordinates to each list. So in total, there's going to be 9 clones. This is the first X and Y coordinate for the first clone, and then I'm repeating this 8 times. I'll talk about this just briefly again. The new X value, so for my new the new item in my list, and this is for the X positions, is going to be set to item 1, index is 1, item 1 from my position. So let me just show this. That would be negative 200 plus 50. So that's negative 150. And then I'm going to add a negative 150, which is new X value, to X position. So that adds this right here, negative 150. And then I look at, I set new Y value, a variable, to item 1, index is 1 still. Item 1 of Y position, that's 160, plus delta Y, which is negative 1. So new Y value is negative 150, excuse me, negative 160 plus negative 1, so that's 159. And I add 159 to Y position, so it adds the second item here. Once that's done, I increase index by 1. And the reason I do that is because index will be 2. And so when I loop back, I'm going to be grabbing item 2 now, which would be negative 150 plus 50. That's negative 100. So that will set out of this negative 100. Item 2 from Y position is 159 plus negative 1 is 158, and I add 158 to Y position. And so I've automated the process of making a list. The call to new formation, that's where new formation is this block here that I'll kind of relocate here, which sets clone to 1. And then I make basically as many clones as there are elements in my X position list. The length of X position is 9. So I'm going to make 9 clones. And after I make a clone, I increase clone by 1. And that is because when I start as a clone, I grab item 1 from X position and item 1 from Y position. So that would be negative 200, 160. And then if I touch a spaceship, I delete the clone and I start moving downward. And then when I create a new clone, clone has been set to 2, so that it will grab item 2 and item 2 and then start moving. This right here is the way that we create a new formation. Once we hit 9 clones, and clone is bigger than 9, so we've made the last clone over here. So clone goes to 10. We wait 1.5 seconds, and we once again execute new formation, which runs this again, and it basically creates a new set of 9 clones. So make sure that your code here matches mine. In addition, and I'm looking here, it looks, it looks close to horizontal. It's hard to tell, but good. Let me show you the difference here in a bigger screen. If I set delta Y to 0, which means all clones will start at 160, notice what this looks like. Definitely not horizontal. You can see the line goes up. Definitely not. So much better if I change this delta Y to negative 1. Yeah, you can clearly see. Okay, so make these modifications. Let me just zoom out here in case you need to pause this video and just zoom in. I'm sure you should be able to zoom in, but let me know if you can't. This is all the code for the alien spaceship. The spaceship itself has not changed a whole lot in terms of the code within. We have right arrow, left arrow to move the spaceship sideways. We press on the space key. We create a clone. And here is the code for the clone, the projectile, to move, change Y by 5. So that moves up. And what I want you to implement then is, after you've made up this code, I want you to add a score. Every time you kill a clone, I want your score to go up by 1. So let's start there.